From plein air to abstract expressionism, now we're going to have a conversation about encaustics, another type of art at Sausalito Artists Work, and we're meeting artist Kathleen McMahon. How are you?
Very good.
I'm learning a lot on this show. What on earth are or is encaustics?
You know, encaustics is a really fascinating topic because it was actually used in the Egyptian times on the tombs. And then, of course, people were dying a lot because you're actually burning wax and painting with it. So it really took about the Jasper Johns time when he came back and a lot of appliances were invented. People came back to it, and you actually do heat up wax, melt it, put color in it, and paint with it. It's very fascinating.
This must take a lot of bees.
It takes a lot of bees, but on the other hand, you know, the whole bee colony collapse thing makes it very interesting to us, because if the bees go away, the value of our work is going to go through the roof because beeswax is, you know, endangered.
All right, so encaustics is a specific form of work, which obviously you do.
Yes.
Which is, would you call it painting with beeswax or sculpting? Or
some people sculpt with it. So I happen to paint with it. Some people do collage with it. It is a media. People are treating it like it's an art style, and you can say that, but it's really use of material. So we see sculptures with it. They're putting it around plaster. Some people are painting with it. Some people are pouring coffee grinds into the wax. Anything you can embed in wax, you can do with this art form.
All right, so the simple question is, why?
I think because when you layer the wax and you build different layers of your art material within it, you get this translucency that just drops through the layers, and it's just a brand new thing that a lot of art collectors have just not seen before. Right,
well, let's say I mean, I'm not being silly, but you know, let's say the bee wax industry doesn't produce as much wax. Is it still considered encaustics if you use synthetic wax? Or, I mean, is it specifically, it has to be organic, it has to be beeswax?
It tends to be beeswax now. We don't know what's going to happen after bees go away, but right now it does tend to be natural beeswax. We'll use pharmaceutical grade or natural. People have different approaches to it, but not a lot of synthetic stuff yet. But we explore, so I'm sure that would be the next evolution of it.
So what's a typical day in the studio for you at ICB in Sausalito, working with beeswax?
Working with beeswax, well, it takes, sometimes when you use a lot of beeswax, it will take an hour or two just for your trays to heat up and get everything melted. And you always have to paint on a hard surface because obviously wax will crack on something that's movable. So then you start working on these large surfaces, and you know, you can cut up paper, you can use photographs, anything that's sort of moving you for your composition, and you work layer by layer by layer. And some of my paintings have 50 layers of wax in them.
So how long does that take?
Weeks sometimes, but different than oils. The great thing I love about it is it's actually dry right at the end and it's done. Whereas oils will take weeks to dry once you're finishing it.
Now this sounds to me like it was a lifelong passion, but we were talking before the camera started that you came to the arts not at the beginning of your career, but kind of midpoint. You were actually a techie turned artist, correct?
Yes, in a lot of ways. Although, as I was mentioning, when I was in high school, I actually worked with handicapped kids and taught art to the handicapped children. So I had it in my life, but did not identify myself as that until about 10 years ago.
And so what was the aha moment when you said, I'm an artist?
I met a plein air painter who went out at Land's End.
And describe also, I should have asked that question of Sue, describe for the uninitiated, what is a plein air painter?
A plein air painter is really simple. It just means that you're painting outside, but the movement of plein air talks a lot about light versus color. A lot of artists talk about color, but plein air is more about, can I represent light in art? And so, and it's the immediacy of it, because obviously you're outside, the light's moving all the time. So it's be able to create this image of a light within an image and do it that way. So there's a lot of people who will just paint outside. So I met a guy who was painting out at Land's End. He's like, yeah, stand behind me, come see what I do. And I just had this immediate feeling of, wow, I could do that. I could do that. And that's what started it for me. So I never took a class. I've spent my 10 years.
You're completely self-taught?
Completely self-taught.
Including the encaustics?
Including the encaustics.
So where did that come? You saw a bee one day and you said, that fascinates me? I mean, I'm just kidding. But I mean, it seems like a very specific type of art form? What
It
fascinated
is.
you
You
about
had
it?
to meet someone.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of people doing it in the city when I first started doing it about 6 years ago. And I met someone and was visiting their studio for a completely different reason. And they had this whole wax set up at the time. And I was the same. I was like, what is all this? What is this? And I was fascinated with it. And I said, oh, you must show me how to do this. And I was hooked immediately.
Sue and I were speaking earlier about the sometimes, or at least the perception, that the arts or artists and technologists kind of butt heads. But you don't think that's the case. I understand you were actually the first artist in the area that had an arts website. On
the internet. I was involved with the internet, Usenet, which is right before the internet, and then as the internet started, there was no browser yet. And so when they developed the browser, which was Mozilla, I developed the first art site to kind of show, it was the universities at the time, images of paintings from different universities. It's called CraftWeb at the time. So I don't feel that. I don't think artists understand technology. I don't think it's a butt the heads thing, though. I think it's just a lack of knowledge.
Right, because I know that there are some artists who feel, well, I can't. Why would I can't show my art online. It's not going to be perceived of the same way as versus size or sometimes color issues. But also, why am I going to give it away when I want people to buy it? How do you answer that?
Well, I'll tell you, I had a lot of friends in the beginning who would say to me, I can't believe someone's buying your art off your website. I can't believe they're doing that.
But they were.
And they were. I sell most of my work through my website, actually. I do sell some through my studio, but because I've been on the internet for so long, a lot of my sales happen through my website. People do. And yeah, they can see the image. Whole different experience than standing in front of the piece.
In our last few moments, talk about specifically Sausalito Artists Work and working in ICB. That's a completely unique space of any place, and I've been to 60 countries. I've never known a former Navy building site become an art studio.
Well, the reason why I moved there and I loved it, I was in a gallery in the city for 3 years by myself. And so I love the community there. I not only love talking about art, I just love hanging out with artists, no matter what they're doing. And I get this great experience with over 70 artists, as you said, who do so many different things. Great diversity. What a wonderful experience. So I love community, living around artists. I think that's great.
Right. And so we can see your work this Labor Day at Sausalito Artists Work at the annual Open Studio.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. We've been speaking with Encaustics artist Kathleen McMahon. I'm David Perry. You've been watching 10%. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week. Good night.